RSI website now has a interesting infograph discussing all of the facts from the Xenothreat 1.1 tests, and all the data was correct as of September 8th, 2021. Um, and this was released September 22nd, 2021, today. But nevertheless, it's interesting. So let's dive into it a little bit. So the Xenothreats defeated, they thank us for our hard work, and was sent back to the Pyro system with their tail between their legs. Great. Definitive win for the Stanton and its inhabitants, however, it wasn't plain sailing. So the number of crates actually delivered, they're saying as of September 9, was 1,243,892. And what's interesting about that is the crates was like the least common thing people did. It seemed to like kill the events when I was in them. But to be fair, a lot of my experiences were not in the PU; they were in the PTU, the testing universes. Time and time and time again, I went into testing as requested, and I helped contribute to those, and did whatever the case may be. One of the other interesting things is the Zeta Prolinide clearly was more common, and the Dulu is second, and then your acrylic is like only a third of what everything else was expected. It is possible that these crates distributed in different amounts. I'll be honest with you, I didn't really notice too much. This one, I if I was to speculate, I spent a few moments thinking about it before I recorded this, and I was like, I don't think I've seen this as often, although I'm probably wrong. Because I wasn't exactly a crate expert. We went up to the broken ships, parked our ship as close as we could to the ship, and made sure the coast was clear, and then ran inside and grabbed some crates. I didn't have like this wonderful crate procession. At most, my parties were, if we're lucky, had 3 people, and that was me included. I would join up with random people and have some fun, or I was just running it solo in a 600i or a cat. The caterpillar was surprisingly good at that, at running these for combat, not for crate running. And remember, that actually brought up an interesting fact: is if you have to go pick up a crate and you're part of the bridge crew, you have to think about the ship has to have an easy on, easy off for the bridge crew. Shockingly, the 609 was pretty good at it because there's an elevator just behind the bridge. As long as you put yourself to 0 meters a second, parked up next to the wreck, you could actually put yourself out on an EVA'd elevator. You literally send the elevator to the bottom, and you're outside. You're outside. Um, so just an interesting fact. There is no health services like you'd have on the 890 or the Carrack, but it's still worth mentioning. I mean, I only got into combat once, maybe twice. One time I wasn't quite sure while it was inside a wreck, but I didn't do that many boxes. So let me just remind you that like I would grab a couple if like nobody was doing it, and then if I saw nobody else was doing it at all, I'd just say okay, well I'll come back when this is ready to go. Oh well. And sometimes the entire event would despawn, or it was broken, etc. But anyway, the total Idris is destroyed 11,404. Very cool number with the 404 at the end. Um, I would say that this is not the way it looked when the Idris fires. This must be concept art or just something creative. When it fired, you would see this thing charge up, and it fired it so fast you barely even seen the shell, if you've seen any projectile at all. And I think throughout the testing they started adding a little bit more to it, but it never looked like this. There was never like a flame out in space, etc. I would say that the Idris was only scary when you're in front of it. So having a ship that was willing to hide on the sides and being able to have a pilot that really understood that was useful. One of the ships that I went down in was a Hammerhead, who the pilot, despite most of us on the ship chatting in party chat and such and everything, and voice telling him over and over again, "Do not sit in front of the Idris." He did, and the Idris basically primaried us, and that rest was history. So I find that interesting that like it wasn't they're a threat, but they're not an existential threat for these smaller ships. As long as you stay the heck away from the front. The Idris can spin quite a lot, a shocking amount of spinning for such a large ship. It's always something I got to remind myself is that in Star Citizen, just because something's big doesn't mean it can't maneuver. but it seemed like it took time to despin, decelerate, whatever you want to call it, and that gun took a very long time to charge up. So, and then later on, when modules come in, it'll be very interesting to see how strong the Idris's shields and armor are, and then the module hit points of that front weapon system or the extra power plant because it's an Idris-M. The extra power plant in the front of the ship behind those little nice armored hulls below this door. So like behind this gun is a very large extra power plant, a secondary power plant just for the gun. If that power plant's knocked out, then well, it shouldn't be able to fire the gun anymore. So the modules are going to be interesting when they finally come online, and it'll no longer be like the death torpedo of the tally. The Retaliator in general is a ship that is very strong right now with the 6 size 9s, and I think further on in this infograph you'll see why that's so important. But they basically one hit wonder a lot of ships on the game, but you have to hit them. Whereas the Idris, you never had a problem hitting them. It was more just going back to reload to get more torps. Having modules that would actually take the damage, like say for example, if a tally could fire 2 size 9s and knock this thing out at least temporarily for a couple minutes, suddenly the tally would have a job. Suddenly the tally would be terrifying, and especially NPC Idrises, it would certainly be like a specialist. Like come in, knock out key modules. So the thing can't run with its engines. The thing can't turn well with its thrusters. Its main gun, even hopefully in the future, would be able to be knockoutable. Um, Not only can the Retaliator do a lot of damage, it would also be that extra factor of being able to take out those critical components on the enemy Idris. And it would help you practice, I think, for PvP. I'm not saying there's going to be exactly the same. I think a player Idris with its proper modules and proper damage controls and everything else involved and a whole crew is going to be far scarier. But I think that the same, in theory, the same ideas apply. Take out important modules, try to restrict its ability to move, restrict its ability to deal damage that's important, and then you can bring in the rest of your fleet and take it down very quickly. So, total missions undertaken 734,000, and that includes missions that were abandoned and deactivated. And I'm happy to hear that because a lot of them were. It's a shame I didn't have a statistic for that. They might not be able to track that as well if the server crashed or if certain key services of the server crashed at least. But I would have liked to see a little bit more about that because I would be curious if this number was close to half being missions that were abandoned or deactivated, and that's mainly due to the server. That's not due to players. I'm sure there was many that were, but it's not as many as you'd think. It's something where a significant period of time in the PTU at least we had the event crash. And I was happy to see in the few times I played in the PU that my biggest problems were with other players, not with the services being taken down. Whether it was players that didn't know how to play it, it was players that were fighting each other and trying to treat it like a PvP environment, which it was, to be fair. There was that whole pirate component. They didn't have any reward for being a pirate, but it was a pirate component. Uh, and that was more of the things I ran into that were like the conflicts that were needed to fight through and deal with than it was the server crashing. I think they did iron out a lot of the kinks with the PTUs, the many iterative patches. Some were less than 24 hours at a time. You can go back through my videos and fondly remember those adventures we all had through that environment. So you can see here that there was less showdown phases than resupply phases. You can clearly see that they had missions abandoned and missions deactivated are snuck in there. You can see there. I'm glad to see that. And it's significant. It's a significant amount. And that's important because once again that's the server side issues and also players that gave up or crashed themselves and said okay, enough's enough. I woke back up on New Babbage because I didn't check in with the station. I'm not flying over there for 20 minutes or something. Get my gear ready and flying over there and everything. I'll probably be over by then. And yeah, I'm still glad to see that the completed missions was around 46%, 38% for showdown phase. I am glad to see that. I'm glad also to see that the people who made it through the missions completed did not have failures that often. The showdown phase at one point was crashing people just because the Idris fired its gun. There was all sorts of random issues like that. So I stress that this number would be far smaller if it wasn't for server glitches. Just bear that in mind. But it is worth mentioning, it is worth discussing, and hopefully in future events we learn from these and we have more positive experiences and less crashes. The desktop, less 30Ks, and less servers just literally crashing. Uh, Over 2.2 million PvE deaths and 66,000 PvP deaths. And it says right there across both Xenothreat missions. So they lopped in all of the fights on the boxes areas and the crash ships, and also the actual fight with the Idris. And if you look here, no surprise, Anvil Hurricane has the most AI kills, and that's what they're stacking here: deadliest player ships. Interestingly, if you look at the smaller ones, they fiddle with the numbers a little bit. So if this was to stack by PvP player kills, I noticed something really interesting. The Aegis Hammerhead, see this right here? The Anvil Hurricane got less player kills than the Connie Andromeda, the gunship. And that's no surprise. The Connie Andromeda has more sustainability, bigger shields, a lot more weaponry. When you actually put 2 or 3 players on there manning those turrets, suddenly the pilot controlled and the turrets combined is a very sick package. It's a good ship, and it can haul boxes. And probably defend itself a little, well, it can defend itself a lot better than the Taurus can because it doesn't lose that bottom turret. So it's interesting to see that the Anvil Hurricane came in first due to its insane amount of damage on that buffed turret. It was a 2-player just walloping machine, and the pilot still has some weapons. But if you look, the player kills, it has a lot less than some other ships, or it's literally in direct competition. Another one that didn't surprise me was the Drake Cutlass Black. Has a significant amount of player kills, but its AI kills are much less than the Andromeda and the Hurricane. Once again, this is an example of a tale of 2-player ships. The Cutlass Black is best suited when you have somebody manning the gun on the turret, and also have an alright pilot at the very least, and it's good for box collecting. But it is nothing compared to that buffed Hurricane with that serious amount of damage it could put out on its turret. That was where all of its primary damage was, on the top of the ship. Now, what's also interesting is, take a look down here. Do you see this Retaliator? 3,177 player kills. For reference, even the mighty Hurricane only got 2,668. 2,568. And the reason for this is, the Retaliator has those one-hit, one-kill missiles. If it hit a ship at the right angle, at the right moment, it just destroyed it. And unfortunately, a lot of players took this as an ability to just fight off enemy ships through these one-hit, one-kill size 9s. Now that's going to be calibrated in. The smaller the ship, obviously it's going to take less damage from a size 9 torp, and vice versa. A larger ship is going to take more damage. The module will blow out like we talked about. It's going to be a critical issue for even the largest ships. And the Retaliators, if they hit the right way with a couple torps, could knock out even the mightiest of ships. They were the only real threat out there that wasn't Idris related to like hammerheads and 890 jumps and Carracks. Interestingly, these things had enough wallop. However, they only had 6 weapons. They only had the 6 torps, 4 in the front, 2 in the back. And furthermore, that ship, when it had to go resupply, had to fly all the way back to base and resupply. And in the early parts, the missiles were being, the torpedoes, the size 9 torps, were being resupplied. The cost was almost the same as what you were making. Almost exactly the same, if not you were losing some money, depending on how much repairs and refueling you had to do. And this ship right here was not only breaking even at best, or making slightly money at fighting in the ship showdown, it was not very good at hauling the boxes. It's not it has been reworked, to be fair, but it's still, even with the bigger elevator, it's not really the best at EVAing. The side doors help, but once again, I'd rather be in the Connie Andromeda, for example, or even the Cuddy Black with that nice ramp on the back, than the Retaliator. It also it's very needy. It has a lot of small turrets all over it to try to cover its unique geometry, and its concept of being like the bomber from World War II, this heavy bomber. So you can't have like a 2 or 3 person crew and comfortably run all the turrets. People will be running back and forth like crazy all over the ship, and the ship's really long. It's built like a submarine, so this ship is one of those where if I have like a big crew, my first instinct is to put them in a hammerhead with its like I don't know what 6 guns or something like that and a pilot. Then I would put them all in a tally. The hammerhead can sit out there and just pound and pound away on stuff, whereas the tally has to resupply constantly. The hammerhead has far less stops to make. It's just as awkward a box collection as the tally, but its guns can just rip through anything that moves. Uh, the hammerhead's a joy to fly. I prefer though the Carrack because of the medical facilities. If you die on the Rex, you can regenerate right on the Carrack. Hammerhead does not have that capacity, but still, aside from that one minor thing, if you park the ship correctly, you can have multiple turrets pointed at the opening where people are going in and out of, and use tractor beams to try to avoid as much time as possible inside the wreck. So hopefully your crew don't go down. The Aegis Saber is a surprise to me. The Aegis Saber is something that is a superiority fighter. It is something that I've been pounding home about needs to be buffed, uh, but people are using it. Apparently, people are using it so much so the tally has less AI kills than the Saber. But once again, as I reiterated, the Aegis Retaliator has those torps that have to constantly be resupplied. So part of its damage every X number of minutes has to go get resupplied. And I think a lot of people, like me, started out in the tally because there's so much. The pilot can launch the torps. So it's a single player dream until you go to resupply the thing and you start realizing you're not making money on this thing. You're not making any UEC to speak of. And the UEC you're making are going right back out the door to those torps, repairs. Um, it's not fun. It's funny at first until it's not funny anymore. And the third or fourth time you see an enemy hammerhead explode or an enemy ship of some sort explode, and like you see your torp sailing right towards it again, and you're not even gonna get credit for the kill. Uh, you realize like this might not be the ship for you. If you have a lot of patience and you're willing to break even at all times, maybe. But there's so many other ships to value here. I was expecting to see a Super Hornet on here just because they're so popular with the old guard, but clearly the Aegis Saber is a single seat that has all the weaponry attached to the pilot without any issues, without any asterisks is there, so I can understand why it would be able to do things. I also find it funny that the player kills is extremely low on the Aegis Saber. I think that speaks to its lack of strength compared to enemy ships. Hurricane would eviscerate a Saber trying to get close. The Tally would just throw its torps and run from you. It's an interesting world we're in right now in the PvP side of things during these events only, specifically about these events. So you look at the most destroyed ships, no surprises here. The Drake Cutlass, the Avenger Titan. These are ships that we tell everybody to get because they're multi-role. And one of the things we don't really mention too often is, well, because it's multi-role, it's not exactly the best combat ship. Drake doesn't have the best shields on it. Well, all the shields are balanced out right now too, so that's worth mentioning as well. Regardless if you have an expensive or a cheap ship, etc., the shield numbers are lessened. Right now, all the shields have been equalized, weapons have been equalized, so it doesn't really matter what you put on there. But later on, if you were to, say, upgrade a Cutlass Black with, say, classic grade A military shields for its size and put some nice weapons on there, you might have a ship that would certainly be at least more survivable and add a little bit of dimension to it. Or industrial shields that have a nice buffer to them. It might be a little too small for those to appreciate the differences, but it is something worth mentioning. The Aegis Avenger is another example of a very common ship, very popular ship, good multi-role for its size, but it is very small. It's not two-player friendly. The Anvil Hurricane, as it was one of the most common ships and most popular ships and most OP ships, a lot of people running around with them. In my experience, a lot of people that saw a hurricane, if they were in a hurricane, would go try to kill the hurricane, regardless if they're friendly or not. It was bizarre. So hurricanes tended to dogfight like crazy to each other. These numbers are not surprising me, and whichever one basically got the hits first killed the other. The Hurricane was at one point so unbalanced, the weapons basically killed anything in the game in seconds. Almost every ship in the game would just go down to a Hurricane in like 10 seconds or less, 6 seconds, depending on which ship we're talking about. Um, so, yeah, that happened. The Anvil Arrow is another common ship, very popular, hard to get right because it's very small. If you make a mistake, it's going to go down, but it is a great little small fighter. The Arcite Connie Andromeda, not a surprise. You could see that it was a very common ship that was getting a lot of kills. It came in second for AI kills and a serious amount of player kills, doubling the Hurricane, which is shocking to me. But if it's fighting it's designed to kill, like the Arrow, the Titan, and the Hurricane, even the Cuddy Black could be susceptible to getting taken down by an Andromeda gunship. Um, it's not as big of a surprise to me as I would say. These mean nothing to me, the most used weapons. They're just the weapons of these primary ships. Also, because they were literally had the same stats across the board, it doesn't shock me very much. I'm probably oversimplifying that, but take it what you will. And one thing I thought was cool was the people that were in damage versus crates are not the same people, and that means a lot. What I did see out there, I was not one of the top ranked people or anything crazy like that, but I can say from a lot of my experiences, the people that were running the crates were not fighting as much. They would show up late to the party with the fight to the Idris, and they were kind of just phoning it in, it felt like. Compared to the people that were like refusing to run crates, some of them even just sat next to the Javelin at the station and literally just waited for the fight to start. This is the two things I saw. Literally, it was like two different camps, and this speaks to like the ranks system too. I do find it interesting. This is something I didn't check on to begin with. The people who did the most damage to the Idris are also not the same people who did the most Xenothreat AI kills. And I think that's also something else that's worth mentioning is there was a lot of Xenothreat in the crate areas. So there was Xenothreat and UEE fighting in the crate areas. And I don't know why, but at least in a lot of my experiences, the UEE Navy that was at the crate areas didn't seem to do much. They seemed to like hover around a targeted point, and if something was near there, they would shoot at it. That was if it was red, but they didn't like wander around. They sure as heck didn't like, oh, friendlies are collecting crates over this direction a couple kilometers. Let us go circle them, and cover them. Like it was none of that. It felt like the UEE was just kind of wandering around. The AI did not seem to know what to do. Whereas the Reds were like, oh, there's something not pirate, go hunt it. At least in the crate areas. Whereas once it got to the station, I felt like a lot of times the Jav at least had its guns on point. It was interesting fights, but I felt like in the crate areas, it felt like the pirates had the upper hand. That might have been on purpose to make it easier because there was less people doing piratey stuff. So perhaps they didn't want them constantly getting zoned in on. There is some precedent there. In some of the original testing for Idris fights with NPC Idrises for other things and for the original Xenothreat, they said that they took away its ability to focus all of its turrets fire onto a specific target because they said it wasn't that fun to just get knocked out of the sky in 10, 20 seconds or whatever, and they wanted it to have less time to kill, more time to kill. So it spread the fire out. And that has had a weird expectation on players that just assume it's because of AI. Everybody looks at it and goes, oh, the ship doesn't know what to do, ha ha ha. Well, yeah, it probably doesn't. But also, from the ground up, the code literally tells its people to split the fire amongst multiple targets. It is possible that they said, do not allow the entire UEE Navy that's supporting the crate collection, the few ships, it's usually like vanguards and stuff, to come out there to all just chase after one red. If there's only like a couple reds on the field, split your efforts, or don't even bother to attack them for X number of minutes or something, and then go after them. I don't know. A lot of times when there was red players on the field, you didn't collect crates. You just chased after them, and they chased after you, and one of you died, and that was it. Like once they were finally killed or chased off the field, that's the only time you could go back into your crates. And the entire time, you basically didn't get a lot done because whoever was in the wreck just kept asking, "Is there reds? Is there reds? Is there reds?" And the pilot was so nervous about the damn Reds as well that they would have the ship pointed away from the wreck, ready to run away, and or fight. And it was just it was kind of a nerve wracking experience. And I think it's what it was supposed to be. That didn't happen too often though. It seemed like some servers were very strong with it. I think there was groups of parties of people who decided to be pirates, and they would roll in together. That was truly fearsome, though. I mean, it was very rare to see the group of friendlies band together as well as the pirates did. And another thing is, you got to be very careful and selective who gets into your party if you're friendlies and not the red pirates, because if one of the pirates gets in, they can be talking on Discord or some other voice chat system and be telling the pirates exactly what your plans are, where you're at, how many of them are, what your composition is, what your strength is, which ships don't have turrets manned. And one of the most frustrating things was like when you try to coordinate beyond the size of a party, like the whole server come help, that can backfire big time because the pirates are also reading that information. Just remember, you're not fighting an NPC, you're fighting a smart person. I thought it was interesting, this infograph. I thought it was really cool. I'm going to post a link to it below, of course, and just kind of capture this moment in time that's here. And it's kind of interesting. I hope you had a chance to take part in it. I don't think this is the last we'll see of it. I think we'll see more events like this. And I'm going to jump over now to the Ship Showdown Final. Oh, sorry, the championship. Ooh. And we're going to see something interesting going on. So right now, I've already upvoted for this MSR, by the way. You can hate me or love me for that. It's fine. You can see that the MPuff cargo is down by 700 votes, or 650 votes. Very interesting stuff. This has been one of the roller coasters I predicted, but it's only this one. Like this is something where the MPuff had a very strong early lead against the MSR, and it is interesting to see the MSR now is in the lead. I think that the MSR getting the final would probably be a mark of trying to save face on this crazy event with how far the Arco cargo has gotten. But I think it's also speaking to the desire and dedication of the team who has been pushing the Argo cargo all the way through the event. I mean, this is literally a ship that's been propped up by them. So, either side of the coin, congrats to giving the good fight, and a reminder to vote with your mind and vote with your heart about what you think should be the champion. What's this year? Based on the merits, based on what you think of the ships, based on what you want to send a message about. That's fine with me. So I'm going to reset the size of this thing. But let's try to find this damn thing. Okay. So this guide to regeneration. I'm going to try to do a whole video on this, but my thought is if I don't make it through and don't get a whole another video made just about this in the right way, if I don't get around to making a whole nother video about this with higher production value, I'd like to at least go through the facts of this discussion and kind of catch everyone up because it's such an important part of this game. So I'm going to skip the entire intro to this. You've seen it. I'll put a card in about discussing health. I've done it 20 different ways. But I thought this part was the most... So the meat and potatoes of this is basically there is a cloning system now with the regeneration. It's coming in 3.15. And the explanation for Death of a Spaceman is your avatar's memories had passed on. No point in making a biological copy if they can't remember anything. The process needed to degrade over time so that people in the universe are not immortal. And also, interestingly, the NPCs have a longer lifespan than us, but not by much. How your avatar perished should be reflected in your new body. So if they're blowed up, we need to see scars and cybernetic limbs. We also wanted characters to age and not just hop into a younger version of themselves. And there should be only one copy at a time. No clone armies running around. Now, I want to take a moment and remind you that your LTI, your 10-year insurance, whatever you have, is not impacted in any way, shape, or form by death of your body many times or as it ages, as they're saying. Just want to make sure if there's alarm bells going off, don't sweat it. Your character eventually will die. no matter how careful you are and etc. Eventually, it will age out, and what'll happen is your kin, which are controlled by you, and you pick and you make and you design the way you want them, will take over. So their children basically will become the new, the new account you have, the new character you have, and you can make it look exactly like the other character. So that's the fun part of this. The downside is I think a lot of people have grown this attachment to their character. It's one of those things you build up over the years and you earn, and it's earned its keep. Um, but and there are some question marks. Like for example, if your main character served in the UAE military, i.e., finished Squadron 42, and has access to military hardware or is able to purchase things or has the pride of the fleet jacket that has like I'm a veteran, etc. Uh, will you still whatever those entitlements are from becoming a citizen through service? Will you lose them when you die and then have to re-earn them, or will there be like a simple process of like, okay, your father served in the military, you have the same rights and establishment, you have a citizenship through your father, so your new character would then have the same abilities, the same ranks and respectability, or will they have to re-earn all of those things? Because it does bring up an interesting point. If players are ever brought into like in game politics or in game military leadership, they could be, in theory, targeted for assassination time and time again until their character's finally destroyed so much they have to like live in a bunker for the rest of their final years in order to avoid being targeted, and that's no fun way to play. Um, and then because if they start over, their new character would not have all those ranks and privileges. Now, once again, I'm talking about in-game stuff that hasn't even been established yet and entitlements that haven't even been talked about yet, other than vaguely like here's what a citizenship is, where you have to earn citizenship. You don't just get born into a citizenship in Star Citizen. Uh, at the very least, somebody in your family has to become a citizen in order for you to become a citizen, and it takes like I think it's like uh, uncommon service to the UEE, like that's just incredible to the UEE or the UEE Navy. Another way to become a citizen is through like having a governor of an area to like basically tell people that you should be one. Another way is through service through the military, and I think that's like there's one other, but the gist is a citizen is somebody who has an extra rank and responsibility, can vote in certain things, and also can run for office. So, and in theory, they've already said multiple times that in Squadron 42, they're considering at least putting in the ability to buy like military hardware if you complete the missions and you become a veteran, and successful veteran. So a lot of speculation was the F8A would be locked behind becoming a citizen, serving the military in Squadron 42, and then being able to get yourself an F8C Lightning, the most modern military variant of the F8, but like the civilian version, would be locked behind that reputation status of being a veteran, succeeding in the wars, and things like that, and probably some cosmetics like a really cool flight jacket that gives people the status of I've completed Squadron 42 on hard mode or something like that. Um, we've seen evidence of that with the pirate ships that you could purchase if you completed Pirate Swarm in the simulator, being only done at a certain level and you have to complete it. That's an example of like how they could handle Squadron 42 is allow on the website and also in game the ability to purchase these type of things if you have that status. So anyway, that's just one little thing I'd mention. That's the biggest thing I have question marks about. However, there's many question marks, but that's the biggest ones. But you will not lose any of your items, any of your ships, anything at all that's like purchased. Do not sweat it. This new system is not impacting that stuff at all. However, that brings in the important parts of if you lose items like cosmetics that are very rare cosmetics, well, you have to wait until the next patch for them to be loaded back onto your account. Because when you die, unless you go back for the stuff and it's still there, somebody didn't steal it or something, uh, it's going to require you to go back. And if you don't go back, or if you don't find it when you go to search, or somebody stole it, uh, it's going to be missing. So they're going to have to figure out how that works, how rare and unique armor and inventory. Now I'm not talking about ships. You'll be able to claim your ship and get that ship replaced. No questions asked, no problems. I'm talking about armor. I'm talking about weapons. I'm talking about cool things that you're carrying around that are for status. And if you die, your body will still have them on it if you don't get found and saved. And if you haven't seen my other videos, I'll just mention this. You have a long period of time that you're in this down but not out state, unless somebody goes out of their way to kill you. It's like an hour and a half, 2 hours or something. And there's a beacon placed there that you can decide to put or not put. At least it's the way we're inferring it now. That could change again. But you can have down that people can come get you. If they choose to come get you, either NPCs or players, that's up to them and they can charge what they want. But your insurance would likely cover that if depending on which level of insurance you have on your body, not on your ship. So interesting stuff. You can get the insurance sorted out in the hospitals and clinics on the stations, hospitals on the planetary landing locations, on the first floor of them. The hospitals are already there. The insurance system is not there yet. You're already just kind of covered indirectly. We'll see in 3.5 if that changes. The PTU is going to be very soon. Through the rumor mill, I've heard that there may or may not be Evocati testing already being talked about next week. I don't know how that's possible, but hey, that's what I've been hearing through the rumor mill. Now, if that's the case, I would not put it past them PTUing 3.15 a week after Digital Citizen Con. So like mid-October, which coincides nicely with that early prediction of October 22 for 3.15 for everybody outside of EVO, at least for the PTU. We would nicely kind of fit into that category, and at least by a few days different. So yeah, interesting time ahead. I think October's going to be a very exciting time to be a Star Citizen fan, a backer. It's going to be a very exciting time. With the imprint system, the discussion basically is that this is where they're scanning your body. They have the DNA. They only have one because as the quote, don't want the scan running. Don't want clone armies, and also by only having one imprint at a time, it will only allow you to set it up as one home point. So what was talked by Rich Tyrer was there would be a home point when you first log in, and so be very careful where you log in at, especially if you don't have a ship or you don't have a lot of ships. He talked about basically you pick a home point, and that's where you live. You have to reset that if you want to change it. Now, if you fly around on a Carrack or an 890 or something like that, and you have regeneration point set up, like you set the remote ICU as that location, that's fine. Once that ship is destroyed or put away or whatever else, it's reset back to your home point, which is whatever location you chose it to be. So regeneration is the term they use to recreate the deceased source. So they take the scan and they rebuild you. But as I talked about, they're going to have a near identical copy, not a copy. So they talk about effects of any echoes, like damage to your body that would be there. So like if you got blown up significantly, you might wake up with a cybernetic. You might wake up with significant, like your skin is reflecting that you're aging and you're more damaged. Stuff like that. And these are some of the more interesting things. Back to the echoes. These are when a major traumatic event occurs, such as death or even regeneration itself, the psychological impact of it can be so strong to permanently alter the imprint. For example, if a person's legs are crushed prior to death, there's a possibility that an echo will be created that alters the imprint so the individual's legs no longer function. So then you need cybernetics. Echoes are the reason why patients may regenerate bearing the scars and wounds of how they died, and why one copy of a person can exist at a time. Regeneration itself also creates echoes, and over time an individual's imprint will degrade and become less viable. This is why imprints cannot be used to extend the life of as the process of aging itself echoes through the imprints. However, testing has shown the higher quality the medical equipment and the spear, the less severe the impact of echoes will be. So this is very interesting because inside the Carrack and the 890 jump, there is tier 2 medical beds, and they allow for regeneration currently, and they seem like they're going to keep that ability, as will other capital ships. However, in the Apollo, there is the ability to import tier 1 medical beds. Now, the Apollo is not out yet, so it's a shame because we can't do like actual, like, I'd love to be on the PTU and do like 100 deaths and just see what happens. And it'd be kind of hilarious to do like the Million Dreams song, make a parody of it from The Greatest Showman. But anyway, one of the things that would be really interesting is to see is a tier 2 bed versus a tier 1 medical bed. Is there a significant difference in the amount of damage that is received on these things? Also, is there situations where it would be better to take that ride back to the planetary landing location or to at least a station nearby that you're hooked up into as your home station? The clinics, which are not, they've already said, are not as capable as the planetary landing locations, but they're pretty capable. Will they have a better effect on you than running around in these ships that have these lower tier beds? So it would be interesting. As I understand it, the clinics themselves should be tier 2 as well, but don't quote me on that. I think that's changed. I think it's changed 3 different times I've heard it so far. Whether the clinics are going to be as strong as the planetary landing locations beds, we'll see. So that's my answer is we'll see. I hate to say that. I love doing the digging and research and just knocking it out of the park for you, but it's not there. Every time the teams come on to talk about medical stuff, they're slightly nuanced in how they say that kind of stuff. This is some of the first in print, on the ground information that's publicly available that we can talk about and really kind of. I feel like if it's here, this is something that they're really sticking towards. So, back one step here, we're talking about the Abraham Spears. Technology inside the medical beds and scanners that allows them to create and store imprints made out of advanced materials that are of alien origin, and technology behind the spears was made public to encourage mass production and development. It is important to note that not all spears are created equal. Again, I mentioned that in the other one. Higher quality spears are better to preserve imprints and more cycles before viability failure. So that's another example. More cycles of the regeneration process if you have better beds. And the fact that they have advanced materials and are alien in origin, the price is dramatically higher. However, it seems like there's some form of subsidization by making them public to encourage mass production and development. So I read that as expensive, and then I also read this as it might be slightly less expensive because they're realizing, like, we got to fit this into a Cuddy Red, a tier 3 ones. So, sorry, tier 3s did not allow regeneration. So it would be once again, the Carrack, the 890. And I want to take this moment to mention, if I don't mention an exact ship, you can ask, but just assume it has it. The Idris-P, the Idris-K, the Idris-M, the K and the P are the same thing. But yeah, those ships all have it. The Kraken does not have it at this moment. However, they've been talking about considering putting at least basic medical services into a Kraken. And I've been one of the people pushing for the Kraken Privateer and the Banu Merchantman to both have the ability to have a clinic as a plop-in store. The Kraken's Privateer uses an entire cargo hold basically to have 8 shops. And to be honest, I don't see why one of them can't be a clinic, at the very least. The Banu Merchantman has the same deal where it has a couple assorted shops, and it's smaller. It's a medium class versus a heavy class. But it's something where it's something to think about. The imprint viability score, the IVS, is something we're going to see go down and down over time. The more you get blown up, the more bad they are. The score is going to go down, and the riskier and riskier it's going to be to make that jump. As your score goes down, the heavier you're going to have to think about carefully, like, my IVS is at blank, let's say 60% out of 100%. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but let's say the IVS is like a percentage. Maybe I should start waiting more for my rides out, waiting for somebody to come rescue me, paying them, and dealing with it that way. It's not as fun, it's not as convenient, but at least I keep my gear and my IVS doesn't keep going down. Regen is a term for individuals who have undergone restoration. Slang. This seems like a lore mix-in thing, which is fine. A lot of this is lore. You can, for example, the spear names and the traumatic response echo. This is all lore support being added for this system that's also got game mechanics tied in, which I think is really cool. By the way, I think if I had a chance to talk to the lore team, I would say that this is the way to do it. if you want to get people's attention and you really want to get the community excited about something and lore based, this is how you tie these things in. You add the lore stuff in with brand new technologies and things that are exciting new features sets that people are excited about. And it kind of just melds together so nice. It helps flesh out that system and gives it depth that it didn't have previously before your work, and it also allows people more eyes on your work and gets that lore factor kind of tied in and presence and gets people excited. I think one of the most exciting systems in EVE Online is cloning and the clone bays. And I think of like the cloning system and about how the jump mechanics worked and how the idea of the capsuleers being, basically live forever. They're immortal. Capsuleers are immortal, except for barring the most crazy um, things that were done to them, like was it Empress Jamil from the Amar. I think of her, except for like barring some in lore thing, they're basically immortal. And I never sat well with me that the idea that they were immortal. I think this is actually a better system that makes more sense. That over time you eventually die, and there is a mechanism though that doesn't ruin your LTI, your tenure, and whatever else you get. Everything else you've earned in game, the organizations you've built, you don't lose them and have to start from scratch completely. Um, that's pretty cool too. I think this is a happy medium between the two topics. Uh, People are still impressed by how long others have gone without needing a regen. Um, Cycle they're on. Okay. So people may be impressed if you don't die that often, but then again, I think industrial players are going to be pretty well off. People standing on the bridge of a capital ship are probably going to be pretty well off. So I think it depends on your job. I think it depends on what you're flying. If you're flying around in a fighter jet, a space plane fighter, small, medium, you're probably going to have a bad time once in a while. But most of the time, you're going to have more excitement in your game. Whereas people that are flying around in mostly bigger ships or industrial ships that are in well protected areas are going to die a lot less. So take that what you will. Or if you're just a burger city folk person, you just do market trading and you're on your alt or something that just does that. Uh, that person's probably not going to die that often, at least unless they glitch into a tram door or something on Lorville or something. Frequent imprinting is strongly encouraged, which is cool. So if you look, the longer the gap, the more memories and experiences will be lost. So it is important to do imprinting constantly, and I think that's interesting to think about. If you're not planning to live on a station or a planetary landing location, you're going to want like ships visiting that have medical facilities so you can restore yourself. And then that brings up another question of, can I get an imprint on a capital ship and then have this capital make a deal with me? I pay them X number of UEC, that they will take this imprint along with many others. And when they go back to the station to resupply or get more goods to sell or whatever they're doing, they drop off the imprints. They upload the imprints to the system and they collect my second fee. Like I pay them once when I do the scan. I pay them again when I confirm my scan's been updated in the central system. That might be something to be done for outpost folk and people living in small towns. It may also be an excuse, though, for you to have to go back once in a while. Get on that Genesis Starliner, take the ride back, update your clone, get some supplies for your place, make some negotiations for trades, and then go back to your place. That might just be part of life. Or take the risk. But anyway, this advanced progenitive distillate is used as a base material for cells, tissues, and organs and can be bioprinted for use in regeneration. Biotocorp Regen Serum. As somebody who's been into 3D printing for a few years, and then I was very heavy during what just went through the world recently, I could say if I could, I would have gladly have done more. And one of the things that I had to learn was a lot of the materials you work with are very hard to work with because if you have stricter rules on keeping things clean, like you have a heavy amount of alcohol, rubbing alcohol sprays, and you're keeping gloves on, you're masking up every single time you go near the machine to work on it. Like if you're making different parts, I made a heavy amount of mask relief straps, for example, for people to take the pressure off the back of their ears. It was a small piece of plastic that you could adjust the different size heads, and it would allow you to have the straps run through these openings on the back of it. And they were very comfortable, and people that had to work 8, 9, 10, 12 hours really appreciated them. And I had boatloads of them going out the door. I was just giving them away because they were so small and cheap to make on my 3D printers. However, if I could have been able to make materials that are far better and more important for that, it would have meant that I couldn't do it at home. I would have had to donate my machines to a location that had better, cleaner standards. I could only keep. I literally had enclosures built. I had gloves, alcohol, mask, and that was as good as it got for plastics. And then I sealed it all up in Ziploc bags when it went out the door with a bit of alcohol in there, and that was as good as I could get. But if I went past that limit, if you start talking about cell, tissue, live organ material, these machines are going to have to be in ultra clean environments, sterile, clean environments. And I think of my extremely rudimentary build lessons that I learned from having to have a clean environment and thinking to this level of literal tissue material being formed. It's going to be put into people's bodies or create a body out of. And I worry. I'm like, ooh, that's 16 gazillion times past what I'm thinking of. And I hope that this system is enclosed. I hope this is cartridge based or something like that, where it is not something that you have to handle by hand constantly. And it is something that is not going to be prohibitively limiting on people's clean room environments. Because I don't think, when I think of clean rooms, I don't think of the 890. Well, the 890 jump's pretty sterile, but sorry, poking a little fun. But I don't think of a working ship that has environmental things that are coming in. Even the 890 jump, has a hallway right there that leads out to the outside, leads out to a space hangar. I think of all the material that's on the bottom of those landing gears and wheelie carts that are being wheeled in with people's new food for the week being brought in right nearby. And I don't think of a clean room environment that's designed to respawn a human being, build a clone. Uh, that's just me. I'm overthinking it, obviously, but I winced a little bit when I read this the first time. And yes, I do cheat at these. I read them usually. At least I try to guide through and kind of go through what can I skip, what can I not, what do I really want to focus on and not miss. And I still end up missing something and cringing when I'm doing editing, but at least I tried. At least I tried to give you something. Um, Outlaws will sometimes refer to wiping someone out as killing them in a manner that stops them from regenerating. Also can be referred to as ghosting. Uh, Fine. I think that they've said many times that most of the time uh, they said that the term being originally tied to taking someone's account out of the spear. I do not think that's going to be possible. Do not sweat that. I don't think there's going to be somebody able to hack into your account, hack into your I'm talking about in-game world that you're in, and remove you from Abraham spears, and then the outlaw can then shoot you in a contract and then take you out. And like, no, it's going to be they shot you, you went down, and you're in that down but not out state, and then the outlaw comes over and permanently kills you, as he sees it. That character is now dead there. The only way you can go back is if you want to go back and fight for your gear that they've stolen, if they did, or just get your gear back when they're not there anymore. If it's not expensive stuff, they might leave it there, and then you're doing that because you got cloned. You woke up in a cloning bay, one of those beds that can allow for regeneration with the Abraham spear, and it is not because you will never have your imprint wiped. I do not. I have faith that they have the capacity and the knowledge to not do that. No matter how much of a criminal even you are, I don't think they're going to allow you to be wiped from the system. Just could be wrong, but I doubt it. So, dead, kill, murder, regeneration is still relatively new technology. Those terms still not referring to the stopping of life forms, regardless of the individuals being regenerated or not. So this is a great way for them to have NPCs that still say, "I'm gonna kill you" or something, and they don't mean like kill you. They know you're gonna come back as a regeneration or down but not out state. If you have friends nearby, and let me take this moment to remind everyone, this is one more time where having friends matters. Banding together as a small group is critical here. If you get knocked out with a sucker punch or something, or with a shot, bad luck, you stuck your head up to see something and bam, you're in that down but not out state. If you got friends nearby Heck, if you fall off a cliff, if you got friends nearby, guess what? They can bring you back. At the very least, they can drag your down state for hours. They can literally throw you on the back of an well, I don't think they can throw you into an ROC, but they can throw you. They can throw you in scenarios where they can just bring the ship over, throw you in the cargo hold, and then when they're done mining, they can go get you regenerated. So that body is still going to survive. It's not the funnest way to live, but in ships that do have the ability to regenerate will be a premium. That's just obvious. But I do stress that being in a group is going to be infinitely more valuable. Because instead of like putting down a beacon and hoping some random NPC or player comes and gets you and saves you or whatever, and nobody takes you out completely, or having to respawn all the way out and lose all that gear, having a few friends around is important. Because it's not always going to be players, it's not going to be NPCs that kill you. It's going to be the environment. It's going to be something you're not paying attention to. It's going to be enemy creatures can attack you. There's going to be a mining incidents where the mining materials explode inside the cave or something like that. You're going to need it. And this also reiterates that vehicles are going to be very, very useful. It's the less time you're on foot, the better. If you're inside a vehicle and somehow you die, if you have two seats in that vehicle and the other person can drive, now all of a sudden they can just take you back. If you happen to not be the driver, even better. Like I can't stress enough how that's important. And being on a ship as well is an even better importance. If somehow, some way you went down, they can just leave you lay there and go take you back somewhere else safe, quickly, within minutes, and get you back in the game. So I think also this iterates that outposts are going to be more and more valuable. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're living moonside, if you're living something like that, or planet side in a planet that's less inhabited, it's not like it's ArcCorp where it's just city after city, and you go down, being able to land somewhere and get this type of treatment, even if it's a basic treatment, would be very useful. And I think that there's a lot of scenarios where you're going to be close to down but not outstate, but you're not quite there yet, where that tier 3 bed on, say, even a Cuddy Red or other ships that are going to come along, or an Apollo configured with tier 3 beds as well. It can configure tier 1, 2, or 3. That's why I keep saying that interchangeably. It's going to be important. And I hope to see even vehicles that have some type of basic medical services, but at the very least, I'd like to see outposts that have them. I'd like to see an outpost with a tier 3 bed at the very least in a room where you can build it on and go, look, okay, our little outpost gang here, we've got 4 little outposts surrounding this one cave. We got defensive turrets on the north, south, east, and west, and we've got missile turrets as well, defending it from other players, and this is ours now. And oh yeah, and Bob has the medical facility. If anybody gets hurt, take your stuff over to Bob's place. He's got the medical place. Or there's a pad just sitting there with a Cuddy Red laying on it, or even Apollo if you got the cash, and you're willing to risk that ship just sitting there. That's another example, topic for the day. I have a lot of dreams for the Apollo, but right now, this minute, but both the medevac and the triage. But right now, this minute, we're dealing with 3.15 where there is no Apollo. Unless they have a surprise announcement at Digital Citizen Con, we don't get it. So I think with all this stuff, exciting things, clones are here, and you're going to have to get used to the fact that you're going to have to respawn once in a while, and planning out your adventures just slightly, and by doing it in small groups, is going to increase your odds of survival greatly. Greatly increase them. So that's basically all I got for this topic. If I get some time, I'm going to put together like a in-lore kind of talk. Like, something where my thoughts are basically, this is kind of overtime topics. So thank you for listening this long. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe. I'm trying to hit 500 subscribers so we can have a community tab to this channel so I can put resources on for new and returning players. But anyway, the overtime talk for this is really short. And the gist is, I had ideas to do something where it would be in lore, like one of these. Thank you for purchasing your Ibrahim spear. Your Ibrahim spear is meant to help. And what I was trying to do was find somebody that was going to do like a cartoonish type feel, like you could find in Portal, like those little instructional videos where it shows like. But I was thinking like a little guy with the 2 little X's on his eyes. It's like, and it shows like some hilarious way he died, like a meteorite fell out of the sky and hit him or something. But like, obviously very, very, very basic. or an Idris just fires, and it's all in black and white, so it tries to make it look cartoony, and then it hits him, and he has his little X's. It's like, if this happens, your Ibrahim spirit will be sure to handle the situation, barring any unseen circumstances. And then have a little bit of a Fallout effect where there's like a third arm coming out of a guy. Like the Fallout the Fallout player cards from Fallout 76 or something like that. I thought it'd be really fun. Anyway, if I get around to it, and what I'm really kind of saying is, if I find somebody who's up for doing some like maybe just 5 strips of animation, 5 little screen grabs of animation, like art. I keep saying animation, but just literally a picture, 5 or 6 different pictures. I'm terrible at drawing. But anyway, that's all I got for today. This is kind of a double header that's meant to kind of cover 2 major topics. Tomorrow, hopefully, I'll be covering at least tomorrow, or if not tomorrow, the next day, I'll be going in depth with Star Citizen, inside Star Citizen video, where the entire thing, as Jared explained it, is a sprint report. So, for those of you who remember sprint reports, you're probably cheering because there's a lot of content squeezed into just a couple minutes. It's worth the effort, basically, of going through each topic, talking about the ones that are important, talk about the ones that are important to you, what I'm learning, what my audience likes, and what they care about is important to me as well. And that's something I'm learning every day. So with a sprint report that long, if it's going to be 20, 30 minutes straight of sprint reports, I'm glad to see it. I'm also seeing a lot of work. I'm also seeing something I want to do right, and I don't want to half do. So that's something important. So that'll probably take precedent after, tomorrow and the next day, hopefully just tomorrow. And that's kind of where I'm at. It's kind of exciting stuff. We've been on a lot of adventures here, and with sprint reports in general, they often have this. They're often older content. Sometimes they're weeks old, and they've been hiding them and holding on to them to like add them to like squeeze them in. Like, okay, it's not enough content for a full feature, or we don't want to make this a full feature and answer all those questions. They come up with a full feature discussion on on ISC. So let's make it a sprint report topic, and then it gets like buried. It becomes like weeks later it comes out, and some stuff is like brand spanking new that we haven't seen before. Here's the art team's latest work on Nyx 1. Nyx Planet 1. So it's a mixed bag. So I just stressed you to prepare for that. Don't expect earth-shattering stuff, but at the same time, we'll probably get a bit slightly clarified information on a couple different topics at the very least. And hopefully we'll get some more white box phase content of the Redeemer into its finishing of the Redeemer. Because sometimes in the sprint reports, they like to do behind the scenes and then also roll into what's modern, what's right now. So I can't wait to see if they have some content about that. I would like to see some more movement on other ships, and I'd really love it if they'd stop showing the damn Vulture. There's a stack of ships that are supposed to be destined for 3.15, and we haven't seen that much about them. And for starters, the Ares Inferno, I would love to see its ammo compartment. It's got a size 7 weapon. How big is that ammo? How much of it does it have? And that would allow us to start doing estimates on its DPS, its alpha capacity, its need to go replenish. Is it going to be, like I just talked about earlier in this video, the Retaliator, where it's really an amazing, awe-inspiring weapon, ... until it has to go reload. So I'd like to see some more stuff on that. The design of the Inferno and the Ion are very well known, but the weapon systems are bespoke, and they are it's unknown how much ammunition they have. Well, the Ion, for example, has unlimited ammunition technically, but its energy system is the major holdback. It's its major checkpoint. It has to replenish like an energy clip, so to speak, of a weapon system. So I care less about the Ion about that. I care more about the Inferno about that, but I would like to see more about both of those ships. And there's a lot to be said about all of these ships that are coming down the pipeline that we are kind of getting bits and pieces about. And I think it's important as well because there's a lot of people making the jump from what I'm hearing to the final 4 ships They might have CCU'd to a couple other ships. Heck, I did that myself. I CCU'd with 600i with store credit, a 600i Explorer during this sale. I'm having fun with it. It's a good ship. It's something that I was using during the PTUs and having fun with, and I think it's going to be a solid ship after the Golden Pass, and it's getting its paint. That certainly weighed on my mind, and yeah, it's one of those things where the C2 as well is getting its paint. The MSR is getting its paint, and the MPUV is getting its paint. And if you missed my last video, I discussed in that one that the MPUV is changing the game for the final pack. If they continue the trend of offering a ship pack with all 4 ships with LTI, or at the very least 10-year insurance, it's going to change the environmental for those 4 ships, because it's hundreds of dollars cheaper than what we expected it to be, because it's suddenly just an MPUV cargo as the 4th ship. So, I mean, if you do the math on the MSRP of all 4 ships, there won't be a discount. It'll maybe for Warbond, but for credit especially, there won't be a discount. And if you do the math, it could be something exciting for those playing catch up. It could be something worth considering. All 4 ships are solid ships, no matter how much I'm playing with those words. And the 3 ships you do get LTI on are rock solid. They're all 3 of them will treat you well. I think it's a little overkill for anybody just starting out, but I'm seem to be every now and then catching up with someone who wants to dive deep. They've played the game, they've done the starter pack, they immediately jump to a larger ship, and they realize that one medium-sized ship is not going to be the be-all end-all for them, and they want to experience more of the game quicker, and they don't have the hours to put in. And the most recent person I spoke with was upset about the wipe, the 3.15 wipe. As a reminder, I keep everything we talk about in confidence. I'll vaguely hint at things, but I will never mention a name. I will never disclose who you are or where you're from or anything like that, and that's on purpose. Unless you tell me flat out, I'm cool with you talking about my experiences. This is as far as I go. My thought is that if you had this concern, there's probably 10 others that have listening to this or are looking through YouTube for guidance who haven't found what they're looking for. That's kind of my measure. It's like 1 to 10. If one person has the problem, 10 more people probably have it, and they want it. They'd like to at least be reassured they made the right call, or there's a lot of money involved. Even in-game money is money, to me, especially after this wipe, because this money that you make AUEC wise after this wipe is likely going to last at least a year, 2 years. All the resources you buy, especially the ships, that was the least common thing that they wiped throughout the entire history of Star Citizen, is the ships that you purchase in game. They may wipe, they may give people a haircut that had this glitch that gave them zillions of ISK, but they never went after the ships as far as I remember, unless it was a full-on wipe like we're seeing for 3.15. So I can promise you that you can expect to see about a year or 2 off of your in-game work. So do bear that in mind before you go out and buy all these different ships. But yes, the only real way to guarantee you have them forever is to buy the ship in this service. For now. Until we hit beta and we start talking about that whole ball of wax. We're still in alpha. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I hope you appreciated this. Yeah, I hope you all enjoy your evening and fly safe.